Steve, thanks very much for having me today.
Great for you to be here. I'm delighted. Partly because our relationship goes back such a long way and the world has changed such a lot since we started off on this venture. So it's great that you're here.
I mean, from speaking at the Vice-Chancellors conference in, I think it's September 2019, and then I went on the tour of the UK and we had, I think, 100, 150, about 100 universities on board, and then we went into lockdown.
Absolutely.
So it was frustrating, but then it actually gave me an opportunity to really develop relationships with staff because we had a little bit more time, perhaps, in some respects, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think we've learned a lot. I think from 2019, we all set sail, and I hope learned a lot from each other as we were going on the BRIT challenge. And then, as you say, COVID hit and the whole world changed. Now coming out of COVID, and there's still legacy of COVID, there's quite a lot of legacy which is impacting on students and staff. But fundamentally, the universities, I think, are still trying to ensure that we consider the holistic experiences in universities for staff and students. And a big component of that, an increasingly important component of that, is around health and well-being. And part of that, of course, is around mental health and well-being. And how can we create a whole system, a whole university approach to support a community? Because we're one community in universities. We may all look very different. We may all appear to do slightly different things. But fundamentally, we're about people. Yeah. Fundamentally, we're about relationships. And we all know that how we create the environments within which people can thrive and flourish is important, but more importantly, how we get people to work together. How do we get that to be something that a university offers? And the reason that's so important, in part, is about preparing people for life beyond university, but also to demonstrate the impact that we have on our community and communities beyond the university. So that's why BRIT Challenge, I think, is such an important opportunity for us.
I agree, and I think when I founded the British Inspiration Trust many years ago, it was about supporting young people with mental and physical trauma. And in those early days, I went to visit 60 charity CEOs before establishing the charity, wanting to get it right and to collaborate, not to tread on anyone's toes.
Yeah.
So, in fact, my relationship with Dame Kelly, even though she has her own trust, has supported me for over a decade because we do slightly different things, but we can still collaborate. But I think what has changed dramatically about the charity is who are we supporting, and it is young adults, students, and staff. I have learned that from Universities UK about the whole approach. I'm also aware, and I know the language is slightly different, but I've recently written a 5-year engagement plan. And I have asked, for example, John DePury at Universities UK and Guild HE, Independent HE, and Moshi, and then Colleges Scotland, Colleges Wales, Association of Colleges, NAMS, NatSpec. The strategy has been written to support their members. But because I don't employ any staff, the comms team or the engagement team are the membership organisations. Yeah. And the 5-year plan is to ask them to pledge support, to come on a journey, because BRIT has evolved by listening to Vice-Chancellors, college principals, student unions. It's evolved to support a wider community. And it started off being a physical activity because I'm obviously, it's about the inclusivity angle. It's not just that. Yeah. In fact, it's gone so much further that the holistic well-being is, I mean, this year art students creating art, students and staff doing acts of kindness in the community, using their skills, or different campuses and courses and departments and faculties saying, we're going to do this. Yes, of course, there's a well-being aspect. But what I've learned about the collaboration side of things is the BRIT challenge is successful when there's a coordination team. And I'm very diplomatic, I hope, in my approach to say what works really well is when the senior management team or the Vice-Chancellor buy into it and say, this is something we'd like to do. That nod enables, for example, Pro-Vice-Chancellor student experience, the comms team, the student body, sport, Wellbeing, student services, to come together and say, how are we going to do it? And then it's not on one person's shoulders or one department's shoulders, because it's very easy to say, let's give it to sport or give it to library services, and you think, oh, please don't do that. So I've learned that through the pandemic, spread it.
Yeah.
And as you know, you don't have to pay to take part in it. And it means that every university and their students' union can decide how they want to take part, what activities, inclusive activities, they'd like to. And as a charity, yes, there's survival, but to give an opportunity to say, you decide who you want to raise funds for, means that the student body and the university can decide. They might want to do a couple of local alongside BRIT. They might not want to do anything for BRIT. I'd rather you take part than say, we've already got a charity of the year, because I think this is, the BRIT challenge is to take pressure off and say, there's a platform.
Yeah.
And forgive me, but I've noticed this year that a number of students' union in February utilised the BRIT challenge to help to destigmatise mental health for their LGBTQI plus community because of the History Month. And it means that if there are concerns about staff wellbeing, there's a platform to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd like to think it's now much more inclusive. There's a real understanding about how we can. Charity only exists to support students and staff, and it's bringing people together, and I love that part of it.
Yeah, and in effect, in 2019, when we started to explore this, there was a particular focus. But over the past few years, that's really opened up and expanded. And the whole thinking behind this now is really about universities are places where people come together. They're very diverse in terms of backgrounds, experiences, age. So we have huge diversity in our communities. So the one thing that universities have to be absolutely focused on is inclusivity, diversity, and the whole piece around how do you bring whole communities together.
Yeah.
That has not changed, that's been there, but I think we're understanding better now how important that is to allow people then to thrive and flourish and succeed, staff and students. So where I think we are now for Vice-Chancellors and their senior teams is the BRIT Challenge provides another opportunity to work out how do you bring a university together for positive reasons, and how do you align what BRIT Challenge can offer in terms of support to what you are perhaps already doing.
Yes.
But it also gives a vehicle to have that conversation across the university. It's something fresh, it's something that people can get behind, it's easy to do. And it isn't all about one thing. I guess where I've got to, and many colleague Vice-Chancellors have got to, is that the pandemic brought out the best in people, but it also brought out some perhaps challenging aspects, the isolation, the loneliness, the disconnect. And what we're trying to do is to rebuild communities post-pandemic. Now, we all know that staff and students will be motivated to do things that matter to them. So if their passion is something that can be brought into the BRIT Challenge, then it's more likely to succeed. And that difference then will bring, I think, more opportunity and certainly more success. So for me, the BRIT Challenge is around understanding what we want to do in our universities throughout the year. It's not just a one-off. That's the other thing. I think this has to continue to work out with student union and community staff groups, and to say, in all of the things that we're going to do, there's usually a calendar in a university, a calendar of events and activities, and priorities, so Black History Month or LGBTQ or whatever area the university is exploring, and how do we work together to also ensure that mental health and well-being, in the broadest sense, is explored, and we work together to improve that. And on that journey, it gives us the opportunity to work out, actually, how do we connect beyond the university? How do we work with communities beyond? Lots of our universities do volunteering. Lots of our universities work in schools and colleges. So how do we bring, I think, the inspiration and the excitement of the BRIT Challenge into that space?
Yeah.
How do we use that as a platform to get students and staff to be working in schools and beyond, to bring communities and the university closer together? The social impact of that is massive, but also the enjoyment and the joy, love of what we're doing then comes to the fore, and we start to get really excited about that. So I think the BRIT Challenge is a platform, it's permissive, it gives us something that we can work with, corral around, but it's not going to inhibit, it's going to, I think, empower. And I hope that Vice-Chancellors and their senior teams are able to engage with it positively and use it in the sense that it was designed for. It's about helping, it's about clearly collaborating, and then I think catalysing what we do in a university and accelerating what we can achieve together. So I think the work that you've been doing, Phil, is amazing because you've moved it on. That's the really exciting bit.
I think there are three things that reinforce what you've just said. And the first is that it's not for me to decide, it's my chair of trustees and the trustees. But if there is an area that I'm unsure about, we are expanding the board of trustees, and we now have 2 university staff members serving on the board, and there are other areas as well. And so I think that's, therefore, I answer to them.
Yeah.
And of course I would do, but it's, the student experience piece. So there's an opportunity for universities to be part of BRIT and drive it forward. The second is now having implemented BRIT regional steering groups. So there are 8 in England, 1 in Wales, and there are 2 in Scotland, because the college's principals network wanted to have their own.
Yep.
So the universities would have theirs. So I listened and made that happen. It is an opportunity for a staff member and a student to represent the university and the Students' Union on that steering group. It's virtual. There are 3 a year. Sort of launch of the BRIT Challenge in the next month, January, a little nudge, and then afterwards. So it's to share some of the innovative ways that universities and student unions are taking on the BRIT Challenge. The second is it is a volunteer opportunity for a student and a staff member to represent their institution and the SU. That's lived experience. There is also an opportunity to share best practice, and I am very fortunate on my travels to see or to be shown a suicide prevention policy, or how the Students' Union are tackling racism.
Yeah.
This is a forum to share well-being best practice, because there are incredible ideas, but sharing them might help. So that's the reason for the steering group. And the third is that as you know, I try to be very respectful in my approach, and I never want to be pushy. But I always, out of courtesy, will drop a note to the VC because and the student union, but in the most diplomatic way possible, but to offer, and the offer does exist, that if it assists in any way work placements, if students are studying communications, there is a piece there. Within the Southwest, if they are here, to work on a module or a project to get lived experience with a charity, but to actually support their own university and students' union.
Yeah.
So I think it's just creating opportunities for the charity to be driven by students and staff, and to remain open and evolve. And I'm just really excited. And what I can see, and forgive me for saying this, but we've had 400 unis and colleges take part in the last 4 years, and I can see the potential. I've expanded the relationships, for example, with NatSpec, because I know a lot of university students get work experience at NatSpec colleges. And when you talked about community, being here today, being at St Brendan's Sixth Form College this morning, and having a relationship with the college as well, the City College, there's something in that, and which makes me want to get Bristol on board, and then you've got the four, and that's really exciting regionally, because it has so much impact having it at the same time.
Yeah. So here's an idea. Many universities sponsor in England sponsor multi-academy trusts.
Yes.
So UE, for example, sponsors 2. We've got Cabot Learning and we've got Tiller. That covers probably 50 schools, maybe more. Joining up with them and the colleges start to give a wider sub-regional impact. And I think that it's those sorts of things where this could go.
Yes.
And I would encourage universities to think really innovatively about how to use this as a vehicle, but also how to accelerate and broaden what we do. Because all of us in various ways are doing outreach. All of us in various ways are doing volunteering. But actually having some banner, some way of pulling all of that together and articulating it and potentially measuring the impact of it, both help, I think, the charity, but also help the institution. So this is about being collaborative. It's not about competition. This is about learning, as you've said, from each other, innovating with each other. Some things will work, some things might not work as well. We'll learn from that. But the thing that will do, I think, a lot for all communities is the conversations and the ability to bring people together.
Yeah.
And that will shine through, and I think will give people the impetus to do more and to go further. VCs and principals of colleges can play a critical role in almost signalling this is something we should be doing. The social impact of this is so important.
I agree. And it's every institution is different. And from 2019, I think there's probably 40 or 50 university vice-chancellors that I have like a relationship, a talk with. Then there are those who are new in post. Then there are those that it might not have reached, and it's tricky because you're trying to maintain that right approach. But I think that without that support, it will filter down, and someone will say, "I just got too much." And I hear this in universities and colleges saying, "We'd love to, can't do it myself." But if there is a plan that this can measure impact, it can support existing mental health and wellbeing initiatives, I think it'll fly. Yeah. But I think it needs that nod to say this is something that is really exciting. So that's the message.
There's also a clever pincer movement, and that is you've got staff and students covered. Yeah. And on both sides, mental health and wellbeing is increasingly important and is rising to the sort of priority area. And so you've in effect got the enthusiasm, the expertise in a much broader audience. I think that's really powerful.
I was a little bit, not shocked, but pleasantly surprised that I drafted this 5-year strategy, engagement strategy, before it went to the CEOs of UUK and AOC. I spoke, speaking to policy. Did the same with NUS. I'm now waiting for comment. However, the response from NUS charity is, we're in. This is just a draft, but they're in. And what they would like would be 3 videos, which one has been made and 2 are on the way, of how does a student union take on the BRIT challenge without the support of the university? Mm-hmm. how does an FE college with a new student union, how does that work? And we've got quite a few examples of that. And then when you've got the combination of the two.
Yeah.
And NUS are now going to pledge their support for the next 5 years to grow that, to reach the ever-changing appointments of welfare activities and student union presidents. So that's really exciting. So I feel that there's something exciting that's going to happen there. And if the two meet together, that's the perfect
So I think there's a golden thread. And mental health and well-being, regardless of presidents and vice presidents of student unions, and regardless of changes in whoever's leading in a university on EDI and well-being, that golden thread is year on year on year. It doesn't change. And that's because we're people. And so it's not going to go away. So my plea to student union is, as the officers are thinking about their campaigning and their elections, have both the desire and courage to have it as a golden thread. So it just moves from one year to the next. It will be innovating all the way through. It will be changing, of course, but fundamentally, it's about creating the best opportunities and experiences for our students, and I would argue the same is true for our staff. So it's not going to go away. It'll change. Yeah. So you might as well make it a golden thread. You may as well make it something in your strategic plans that are there for a 5, 10, 15-year period. Then we'll make progress.
And with that message, I think also is, one of the strongest relationships I have is with Rosie Tresler at Student Minds.
Yep.
I've known Papyrus for over a decade, Papyrus Prevention of Young Suicide. Nightline.
Yep.
So the Charlie Waller Trust. There are a number of different charities. And the Matthew Elvidge Trust, but Hamish Elvidge has been just an extraordinary friend.
Complete star.
Amazing man. Just truly amazing man. And I think sometimes people can look at BRIT and think you're just another charity. My plea to student unions and to Vice-Chancellors and their senior management team is, the reason BRIT is slightly different is I don't have a backroom staff. I'm not raising £400,000 a year just to keep the charity going before we have any impact. The decision not to take a wage, I can't ask people to volunteer if I am not a volunteer.
Yeah.
So in trying to set an example, but also to say, if you want to raise money for Student Minds, do it.
Yeah.
But there is this platform could help you, and just take that bit of pressure off it.
Yeah, absolutely. And completely with you. Let's make sure it happens.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.